He thought he was the king. He thought the gavel in his hand meant he owned the room, the building, and the woman sitting quietly at the end of the table. Jasper Sterling looked his wife in the eye, surrounded by the 12 most powerful board members in New York, and told her to pack her things. He fired her with a smirk. But he forgot one thing: you don't fire the landlord. You don't evict the owner. And you certainly don't declare war on the woman who holds the deed to your entire life. In 3 minutes, Jasper's smirk would vanish, replaced by a terror so pure it would make Wall Street tremble. This is the story of the Boardroom massacre that no one saw coming. The rain was lashing against the floor-to-ceiling glass of the penthouse suite at the Pierre Hotel, but inside the air was bone-dry and suffocating. Jasper Sterling adjusted his silk tie in the mirror, turning his head slightly to catch the light on his jawline. He looked every bit the master of the universe. 42 silver fox hair just beginning to touch his temples, and wearing a bespoke Brioni suit that cost more than most people's cars. Behind him, sitting on the edge of the velvet chaise lounge, was Clara. Clara Sterling née Holloway didn't look like a master of anything. She looked tired. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe practical bun, and she wore a gray wool suit that Jasper had told her made her look frumpy but approachable. That was the brand after all. Jasper was the visionary, the aggressive tiger of Sterling Dynamics. Clara was the soft heart, the legacy hire, the silent partner who sat in the corner and smiled at charity galas. "Are you listening to me, Clara?" Jasper's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Clara looked up. "I'm listening, Jasper. You want me to step down from the charitable committee?" "Not just the committee," Jasper corrected, turning around to face her. He didn't look at her with love. He looked at her like she was a smudge on a spreadsheet. "The board, Clara. The whole thing. It's embarrassing. We're going public in 3 months. The IPO is projected to raise $2 billion. $2 billion. Do you know what the investors from Goldman and BlackRock see when they look at our board? They see a brilliant CEO dragging his dead-weight wife along for the ride." Clara's hands tightened slightly on her lap, a movement so small Jasper missed it. "I founded this company with you, Jasper, in the garage in Palo Alto. I wrote the original code for the logistics algorithm." Jasper laughed. It was a cruel barking sound. "That was 15 years ago. The code has been rewritten 1,000 times by MIT graduates who run circles around you. You haven't touched a keyboard in a decade. You're a figurehead, Clara. And frankly, you're an expensive one." He walked over to the minibar and poured himself a sparkling water, not offering her one. "I've spoken to the board. They agree. It's time for a transition. Today's quarterly meeting. That's when we do it." Clara stood up slowly. "You're going to fire me today on our anniversary." Jasper checked his Rolex, a Daytona, a gift from Clara 3 years ago. "Is that today, huh? Well, look at it this way now, you'll have plenty of time to plan a party. I'm doing this for us, Clara. The stock price will jump 10% once the market sees we've trimmed the fat." Trimmed the fat. That's what he called the woman who had nursed him through his panic attacks in 2012 when the company almost went under. The woman who had sold her grandmother's jewelry to make payroll in 2014. "I see," Clara said, her voice uncharacteristically steady. "And does Sienna agree with this?" Jasper froze. The bottle of water hovered halfway to his lips. Sienna Brooks was the CFO of Sterling Dynamics. She was 28, brilliant, ruthless, and had been sleeping in Jasper's bed whenever he worked late for the past 6 months. "Leave Sienna out of this." Jasper snapped, his face flushing slightly. "She is a professional. Unlike you, she knows what it takes to run a Fortune 500 company." "I'm sure she does," Clara said. She walked over to the window, looking out at the gray New York skyline. For the last year, Clara had played the role of the oblivious wife. She had noticed the late-night texts. She had smelled the faint trace of Le Labo Santal 33, Sienna's signature scent, on his collars. She had seen the credit card statements for dinners at Per Se and weekends in the Hamptons that she wasn't invited to. Jasper thought she was weak. He thought she was a relic of his past, a quiet little mouse he could discard now that he was a lion. "Fine," Clara said, turning back to him. Her eyes were dry. "Let's go to the meeting, Jasper. If the board wants me out, I suppose I shouldn't stand in the way of progress." Jasper let out a breath he'd been holding. He smiled that charming, predatory smile that had landed him on the cover of Forbes. He walked over and patted her shoulder patronizingly. "That's my girl. Don't worry, I'll make sure the severance package is generous. I'm not a monster." "No," Clara thought as she picked up her purse. "You're not a monster. You're a fool." She checked her phone one last time. A text message was waiting for her. It was from a man named Alistair Pendleton, a senior partner at Pendleton Weiss & Associates in London. The text read, "The documents are ready, Mrs. Sterling. Just say the word." Clara didn't reply. She just slid the phone into her pocket and followed her husband out the door. The headquarters of Sterling Dynamics occupied the top 6 floors of a Glass Needle in Hudson Yards. The boardroom was a masterpiece of intimidation. A 30-foot table made of reclaimed black walnut floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, and ergonomic Eames chairs that cost $4,000 a pop. When Clara and Jasper walked in, the room went silent. The board was already assembled. There were 12 of them. They were the titans of industry. There was Robert Vance, a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley who had led their Series B funding. There was Linda Gresson, a shark from a private equity firm who was known for gutting companies for profit. And of course, sitting at the right hand of the CEO's chair was Sienna Brooks. Sienna looked stunning as always. She wore a crimson power suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. Her dark hair was glossy and loose. As Clara entered, Sienna offered a tight, pitying smile. It was the smile of the winner greeting the loser. "Morning, everyone," Jasper announced, his voice booming. He took his seat at the head of the table. Clara took her usual seat at the opposite end, the traditional spot for the co-founder, though lately she had felt more like a ghost haunting the room. "We have a packed agenda today." Jasper started unbuttoning his suit jacket and leaning back. Q3 revenue figures, the expansion into the Asian markets, and the IPO roadshow prep. But first, Jasper paused. He tapped a silver pen against the table. The sound echoed in the quiet room. "First, we need to address a structural issue. As we prepare for the IPO, we need to ensure our leadership team is streamlined, dynamic, and frankly, purely meritocratic." Clara watched the faces around the table. Robert Vance was looking down at his iPad, refusing to meet her eyes. Linda Gresson was staring at her with cold calculation. They knew. They had all been briefed. This was a choreographed execution. "Clara," Jasper said, his voice dropping an octave to sound somber, regretful. "We've discussed this privately, but we need to make it official for the minutes. The board feels, and I agree, that your role as Chief Culture Officer and co-chair is no longer aligned with the company's trajectory." Sienna chimed in, her voice smooth like velvet. "It's about optics, Clara. The street wants to see aggressive leadership. Your softer approach was vital in the startup phase, but we're a multinational conglomerate now. We need killers, not caretakers." "Killers," Clara repeated softly. "Is that what we need?" "It's a metaphor, Clara," Jasper said impatiently. "Look, we've drawn up a transition plan. Effective immediately, you will resign from the board and your executive duties. You'll retain a ceremonial title, founding matriarch, or something similar, and we will buy out your equity at the current valuation." He slid a thick folder across the long walnut table. It slid effortlessly, stopping inches from Clara's hands. "Sign it," Jasper said. "It's a generous offer. $3 million for your shares. That's enough to keep you in shopping money for the rest of your life." The insult hung in the air. $3 million. The company was valued at $2 billion. He was trying to buy her out for pennies, betting that she didn't understand the complex dilution clauses they had slipped into the charter 3 years ago. Clara didn't touch the folder. She looked at Sienna. And I assume you'll be taking my seat on the board, Sienna. Sienna shrugged, feigning modesty. If the board votes for it, I would be honored to serve. It's already decided. Robert Vance grunted, finally looking up. Let's get this over with, Clara. We have a company to run. Sign the papers so we can get to the real business. Clara looked around the room. 12 pairs of eyes, all dismissive, all impatient. They saw a middle-aged housewife who had gotten lucky. They saw a nuisance. Jasper leaned forward, his eyes hard. Don't make a scene, Clara. You're out. The vote is 11-1. My vote counts for the majority of the Class A shares. You don't have a choice. 11-1? Clara murmured. She finally reached out and touched the folder. She opened it, glancing at the legal jargon that would strip her of everything she had built for 15 years. She closed the folder. I think there has been a misunderstanding, Clara said, her voice raising just enough to be heard clearly in every corner of the room. There's no misunderstanding, Jasper snapped. You're fired, Clara. Get out. Clara stood up. For a second she looked small against the backdrop of the massive city skyline, but then she straightened her spine. She reached into her frumpy gray bag and pulled out a single thin document bound in blue paper. I'm not fired, Jasper, she said, because you don't have the authority to fire me. In fact, you don't even have the authority to be sitting in that chair. Jasper laughed, a nervous sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. What are you talking about? I own 51% of the voting stock. I am the majority shareholder. No, Clara said, sliding the blue document down the table toward him. You own 51% of Sterling Dynamics LLC. That is true. She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. But Sterling Dynamics LLC doesn't own this company anymore. It hasn't for 5 years. What? Sienna frowned, looking at her tablet. What is she talking about? 5 years ago? Clara continued, her voice gaining strength. When we were sued by that patent troll in Texas, you were terrified, Jasper. You were scared we'd lose everything. Do you remember what you did? You transferred all the intellectual property, the real estate, and the operational assets into a holding trust to protect them from the lawsuit. You told me to handle the paperwork because you were too busy panicking. Jasper's face went pale. He remembered. He had signed a stack of papers Clara had put in front of him, desperate to shield his assets. He hadn't read them. He never read what she gave him. He trusted her to be the boring administrative wife. That trust, Clara said, pointing to the blue document, is called the Dahlia Trust, named after my mother. And if you look at the incorporation documents of the Dahlia Trust, you will see a very interesting name listed as the sole trustee and beneficiary. She looked Jasper dead in the eye. It's not you, Jasper. It's never been you. Jasper scrambled to grab the blue document. His hands were shaking. He flipped it open. His eyes scanned the lines frantically. Asset holder, the Dahlia Revocable Trust. Sole trustee Clara Holloway. Licensee Sterling Dynamics LLC. This, Jasper stammered. This says the trust owns the IP, so would I still run the company that uses the IP? Clara smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Read Clause 14, Jasper, the bad boy clause. It states that the trust can revoke the licensing agreement immediately without notice if the CEO of the licensee acts in a manner detrimental to the moral or financial integrity of the enterprise, including but not limited to adultery, misappropriation of funds, or attempting to fire the trustee. The room went deathly silent. Sienna Brooks looked as if she was about to be sick. You're bluffing, Robert Vance shouted, standing up. This is legal trickery. It's not a trick, Bob, Clara said coolly. It's a lease, and I'm evicting you. She pulled her phone out. Alistair, send them in. The double doors of the boardroom swung open. The double doors didn't just open. They were pushed wide by a force of nature. Entering the room wasn't just Alistair Pendleton. Flanking him were 4 other individuals, all dressed in identical charcoal suits carrying heavy banker's boxes. They looked less like lawyers and more like undertakers coming to collect a body. Alistair Pendleton was a man of 60 with a face carved from granite and a British accent that made even the most mundane sentence sound like a court ruling. He didn't look at Jasper. He walked straight to Clara, bowed his head slightly, and placed a heavy briefcase on the table. "Mrs. Sterling," Alistair said, "the forensic audit is complete as of 8:00 a.m. this morning." "Audit," Jasper sputtered, standing up. "Who are you?" "You don't work for this company. Security, get them out." "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Alistair said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice had the cold metallic ring of absolute authority. "I represent the Dahlia Trust. As the owner of the building you are currently standing in and the intellectual property your company utilizes, I have every right to be here, unlike you." Jasper looked at the board. "Do something. This is a hostile takeover." "No, Jasper," Clara said, her voice cutting through the noise. "A hostile takeover is when an outsider buys you out. This is an eviction. Alistair, please proceed." Alistair opened the briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents and began passing them around the table to the stunned board members. "Item 1, Alistair announced. The Dahlia Trust granted a revocable license to Sterling Dynamics under the strict stipulation of moral and financial stewardship. We have evidence that the current CEO, Jasper Sterling, has violated both." He clicked a remote he had pulled from his pocket. The massive screen at the end of the room, usually reserved for stock projections and revenue charts, flickered to life. A spreadsheet appeared. But it wasn't company data. It was a credit card statement. "This is the corporate American Express Centurion card," Alistair explained, "assigned to the CEO for business expenses. Note the highlighted entries." The board members squinted at the screen. May 14th, the Ritz-Carlton, Cayman Islands, $14,000. May 15th, Van Cleef & Arpels, $28,500. May 16th, private charter Grand Cayman to Teterboro, $42,000. "Business trip," Jasper said, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "I was meeting investors in the Caymans." "Really?" Alistair clicked the remote again. A photo appeared on the screen. It was high resolution, clearly taken by a telephoto lens. It showed Jasper on the deck of a yacht in the Caymans. He wasn't with investors. He was applying sunscreen to the back of Sienna Brooks. A collective gasp went around the room. Sienna, sitting at the table, went pale. She grabbed her iPad and held it to her chest, as if it could shield her from the image. "That's..." Jasper stammered. "That's doctored. That's a deepfake." "It was taken by a private investigator hired by the trust 3 months ago," Alistair said calmly. "But the adultery is just the moral violation. Let's look at the financial one. That necklace from Van Cleef, it was expensed under client gifting. Fraud." Alistair turned to the board. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sterling has embezzled approximately $450,000 of company funds that technically belong to the licensee of my client's intellectual property to finance his affair with your CFO." He looked directly at Linda Gresson, the private equity shark. "Linda, your firm has a zero-tolerance policy for executive malfeasance, does it not? If you vote to keep him, you become complicit in the fraud. The trust will sue you personally for negligence." Linda Gresson looked at the photos, then at Jasper. The calculation in her eyes happened in a split second. She closed the folder Jasper had given her earlier, the one about firing Clara, and pushed it away. "This is unacceptable," Linda said, her voice icy. "Jasper, is this true?" "It's complicated," Jasper shouted, his composure shattering. "Clara is doing this out of spite. She's jealous. Look, so I spent a little money, I bring in millions. Who cares about a few grand?" "The trust cares," Clara said. She stood up and walked slowly toward the head of the table. "And since the trust owns the proprietary code that runs our logistics platform, I am officially invoking the termination clause." She slammed her hand down on the table. "As of this moment, Sterling Dynamics no longer has the right to use the Dahlia software. Without that code, your trucks stop moving. Your warehouses go dark. Your app stops working. The company is worth nothing. Zero. She looked at the board members. Unless, she added, the board makes a change. Robert, the venture capitalist, looked terrified. Clara, you can't just shut off the code. We have contracts. We have the IPO. The IPO is dead if Jasper is CEO, Clara said. The trust will not license the IP to a company run by him. Period. She leaned over Jasper's chair. He was shrinking into it, looking smaller by the second. So here is the new deal, Clara whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Jasper resigns, effective immediately. He surrenders his shares to cover the embezzled funds and damages, and he leaves the building. And if I don't, Jasper hissed, his eyes red with rage. Then I turn off the servers in 10 minutes, Clara said, checking her watch. And I release the full forensic report to the SEC. You won't just be unemployed, Jasper. You'll be in federal prison. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and Jasper's ragged breathing. He looked at Sienna, looking for an ally. Sienna was staring at the table, refusing to meet his eyes. Sienna, Jasper pleaded. I didn't know, Sienna said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't know he was expensing it. He told me he paid for it himself. You traitor, Jasper whispered. Vote, Clara commanded the board. Motion to remove Jasper Sterling as CEO for cause and to strip him of all executive powers. All in favor. Linda Gresson's hand shot up instantly. Robert followed a second later. One by one, every hand in the room went up. 12 hands. Unanimous. Clara looked down at her husband. It's 12-0, Jasper. You're fired. Jasper Sterling sat frozen. For a man who had spent his life controlling every variable, he was now paralyzed by the one variable he had ignored: his wife. This isn't over, Jasper snarled, standing up. He tried to muster some of his old bravado, straightening his jacket. You think you can run this place? You're a housewife, Clara. You don't know the first thing about navigating a bear market or managing a supply chain. I built the supply chain, Jasper, Clara said calmly, while you were busy picking out tie colors. Now give me your badge. My what? Your security badge. And your phone. And the company laptop. Clara held out her hand. I'm not giving you anything, Jasper spat. He turned to storm out. I'm calling my lawyers. Security, Clara said into the air. The side door opened again. This time, it wasn't lawyers. It was Marcus, the head of security for the building. Marcus was a former linebacker, 6'4", and built like a tank. He had worked for the company for 10 years. Jasper had never bothered to learn his last name. Clara, however, had sent Marcus a birthday card every year and paid for his daughter's braces anonymously 2 years ago. Mr. Sterling, Marcus said, his voice deep and rumbling. I'm going to need your access card, sir. Marcus, get out of my way, Jasper ordered. I sign your checks. Actually, sir, Marcus said, stepping forward, blocking Jasper's path. Mrs. Sterling signs the checks. The building security contract is with the trust. Jasper looked at Marcus, then at Clara. The humiliation was total. With shaking hands, he unclipped his ID badge from his lapel and threw it on the table. He slammed his company phone down next to it. Happy? Jasper sneered. Not yet, Clara said. She turned her gaze to Sienna Brooks. Sienna flinched. She had been trying to make herself invisible, hoping that if she stayed quiet enough, the storm would pass over her. Sienna, Clara said pleasantly, you can keep your phone, but I will need your resignation. Sienna stood up, smoothing her skirt. She tried to regain her composure, flipping her hair. Clara, listen. I was manipulated. Jasper is a powerful man. I was a victim of the power dynamic here. I'm the CFO. The IPO roadshow is in 2 weeks. You need me. You can't fire the CEO and the CFO on the same day. The stock will tank. It was a good argument, a logical argument. The board members nodded slightly, looking worried. Clara smiled. "You're right, Sienna. I can't fire you both and leave a vacuum. That would be irresponsible." Sienna exhaled a small smile returning to her face. "Exactly. We can work this out. I can help you transition. However," Clara interrupted, "I already have a replacement CFO lined up. He's waiting in the lobby. He's the former CFO of Amazon's logistics division. He's been consulting for the trust for 6 months. Sienna's smile vanished. "And regarding the power dynamic," Clara continued, her voice hardening, "I saw the text, Sienna. You weren't a victim. You were pushing him to fire me. You called me the old ball and chain. You told him to cut me loose so you could be the power couple of New York." Clara picked up the folder, the one Jasper had tried to make her sign. "You're fired for cause, Sienna. Gross misconduct, conspiracy to defraud the company, and public indecency on a company asset." Clara pointed to the screen where the yacht photo was still displayed. "Get your things. Marcus will escort you both out." "You can't do this," Sienna shrieked. The cool, professional facade was gone. "I have options. I have unvested shares. The bad boy clause applies to the CFO too," Alistair Pendleton interjected smoothly. "Your unvested shares are forfeited. You leave with nothing but the contents of your purse." Marcus stepped forward. "This way, please. Ms. Brooks, Mr. Sterling." Jasper looked at Clara one last time. There was no love left in his eyes, only pure, unadulterated hatred. "You'll run this company into the ground within a month," he said, "and I'll be there to buy the scraps." "Goodbye, Jasper," Clara said, turning her back on him. Marcus placed a heavy hand on Jasper's shoulder and guided him out. Sienna followed, sobbing, her high heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. The door closed. The room was quiet again. Clara stood at the head of the table. She looked at the empty chair where Jasper had sat for 15 years. She didn't sit in it. Instead, she pulled her own chair, the one from the end of the table, and dragged it to the head. She sat down. She looked at the 12 board members. They were all looking at her with a mixture of fear and awe. They were waiting for her to speak, to reassure them, to tell them the money was safe. "Now," Clara said, clasping her hands on the table, "let's talk about the IPO. The current valuation is too low. We're going to restructure." Robert cleared his throat. "Restructure, Clara? We just decapitated the leadership. The market is going to panic." "Let them panic," Clara said. "We're not selling a cult of personality anymore. We're selling a product, and I'm the only one who knows how it actually works. Now open your packets to page 4. We have a lot of work to do." As the meeting went on, Clara felt a vibration in her pocket. She ignored it. She knew who it was. It would be Jasper calling from the street, probably in the rain, realizing that the corporate car service had also been canceled. But outside the glass walls of the boardroom, the drama wasn't quite over. Down in the lobby, as Jasper and Sienna were marched past the security desk, a young receptionist named Davis looked up. He saw the CEO red-faced and shouting at Marcus. He saw the CFO crying, and he saw Marcus take their badges and drop them into the visitor bin. Davis picked up his phone. He opened Twitter. Just saw the king and queen of Sterling Dynamics get frog-marched out of the building by security. Looks like the coup failed. Had Sterling Dynamics entered drama. He hit send. Within minutes, the tweet was trending. The news wasn't going to wait for the press release. The world was about to know that Clara Sterling had woken up. But Clara had one more secret. One that even Alistair didn't know. The trust wasn't just about protecting the assets. It was about a patent. A patent she had developed in secret under her maiden name 5 years ago. A technology that would make Sterling Dynamics obsolete if she didn't integrate it. And she had just found out that Jasper had been trying to sell the company to a competitor who wanted to kill that very technology. The firing wasn't just revenge. It was a rescue mission. And the war had only just begun. The rain in Manhattan had turned from a drizzle to a deluge. Jasper Sterling stood under the awning of the Hudson Yards skyscraper. watching the water cascade off the sleek black overhang. His $5,000 suit was damp at the shoulders. Beside him, Sienna Brooks was frantically tapping on her phone trying to summon an Uber because the company account and the private driver had been disabled before they even reached the lobby. "This is insane," Sienna hissed, shivering. "My cards are declined, Jasper, all of them. They put a freeze on my corporate-linked personal accounts. How is that even legal?" Jasper didn't answer. He was staring up at the building he had ruled for 15 years. The lights were still on the 40th floor. His floor. He could imagine Clara up there sitting in his chair drinking his scotch, laughing at him. The humiliation burned in his chest like acid. A passerby, a young man in a hoodie, slowed down and pointed his phone at them. Jasper turned away, shielding his face, but it was too late. The flash went off. "We need to go," Jasper growled. "Now." "Where?" Sienna snapped. "The penthouse is in the trust. Remember, you signed it over. We can't go there. The locks have probably been changed already." Jasper's jaw tightened. She was right. He was effectively homeless in the city he claimed to own. "We're going to the Four Seasons," Jasper said. "I have a personal account there that Clara can't touch, and then I'm going to make a phone call." "To who, your lawyer?" "No," Jasper said, his eyes dark. "To Victor Krell." Sienna froze. "Krell." "The CEO of Omni Logistics, Jasper. He's our biggest competitor. He's been trying to buy us out for years. If you talk to him, you're violating your non-compete. You'll be sued into oblivion." "I'm already being sued, Sienna," Jasper shouted, causing a few people to turn and stare. "Clara declared war. You think I'm going to play by the rules? Krell wants Sterling Dynamics. If I hand it to him on a silver platter, if I help him destroy Clara, he'll pay me enough to buy a dozen penthouses." An Uber finally pulled up, a battered Toyota Camry, a far cry from the Maybach they were used to. Jasper opened the door for himself, leaving Sienna to scramble in behind him. "Drive," Jasper ordered, "and turn off the damn radio." Back in the boardroom, the atmosphere was electric, but fragile. Clara had managed to calm the board mostly by dazzling them with a technical roadmap that Jasper had never shown them because he didn't understand it. But the real test was downstairs. The company had 4,000 employees. Rumors were spreading like wildfire. The tweet from the lobby receptionist had been retweeted 5,000 times. #Clara. The Conqueror was trending, but so was #Sterling Collapse. "You need to address the staff," Alistair Pendleton advised. He was standing by the window watching the rain. "They are scared. They think the company is going under. If the engineers walk, we're dead." Clara nodded. She felt a wave of nausea. Standing up to Jasper was one thing. Leading an army was another. She hadn't spoken to the general staff in years. To them, she was just the founder's wife, a relic. "Set up the town hall," Clara said. "Broadcast it to all regional hubs. I'll be down in 10 minutes. She went to the private bathroom attached to the CEO's office. She splashed cold water on her face. She looked at herself in the mirror. The frumpy bun was still there. The gray suit. "No," she whispered. She took the pins out of her hair, letting the blonde waves fall to her shoulders. It was messy, Wilder, real. She took off the gray blazer and rolled up the sleeves of her white silk blouse. She didn't look like a corporate drone anymore. She looked like someone who was ready to work. She walked out to the main floor. The open plan office, usually buzzing with the sound of sales calls and coding, was dead silent. Hundreds of faces turned to look at her. Clara grabbed a microphone from the AV tech. She didn't stand on the podium. She walked right into the middle of the room among the desks. "Hi," she said. Her voice cracked slightly, then strengthened. "I'm Clara. Most of you know me as the woman who plans the Christmas party. Some of you know I founded this company." She looked around. "You've heard the rumors. Jasper is gone. Sienna is gone. The board has appointed me interim CEO." A murmur went through the crowd. It wasn't hostile, but it was skeptical. "I know what you're thinking," Clara continued. "You're thinking this is a messy divorce that's going to sink the ship. You're worried about your RSUs. You're worried about your mortgages. She walked over to a whiteboard where a complex logistics diagram was drawn, a problem the engineering team had been stuck on for weeks. It was a routing issue for the Asian expansion. I know you've been struggling with the Shanghai routing latency, Clara said, uncapping a marker. Jasper kept telling you to throw more server power at it. That's why it wasn't working. She drew a quick line through the diagram, rerouting the data flow through a decentralized node structure. It was elegant, simple, and brilliant. The problem isn't bandwidth, she said, tapping the board. It's the handshake protocol. It's outdated. If you switch to a mesh network architecture, you reduce latency by 40%. I wrote the patch for this morning on my way in. It's in the repository now. Silence. Then a young engineer near the front, Benji, the lead architect, pulled out his laptop. He typed furiously for a few seconds. His eyes went wide. She's right, Benji whispered. Holy crap, it compiles. The lag is gone. He looked up at Clara with newfound respect. I didn't just build this company with money, Clara said, her voice ringing out. I built it with code. I know every line of the platform because I wrote the kernel. Jasper was the face. I was the engine. And the engine is finally back in the driver's seat. A slow clap started from Benji, then the person next to him. Within seconds, the room was erupting in applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was relief. They had a leader who actually knew what they did. Clara smiled. For the first time in 10 years, she didn't feel like an imposter. But the victory was short-lived. Alistair approached her as the applause died down, his face grim. He held out a tablet. Mrs. Sterling, he said quietly, you need to see this. You need to see. It's Bloomberg. Clara looked at the screen. The headline was in bold red letters. Exclusive ousted CEO Jasper Sterling alleges corporate coup by mentally unstable wife. Sources say company insolvent. He's spinning it, Clara said, feeling the blood drain from her face. It gets worse, Alistair said. Victor Krell just announced a hostile tender offer for Sterling Dynamics shares at $0.50 on the dollar. He's trying to trigger a panic sell-off so he can buy a controlling stake cheap. Clara looked at the window toward the city where Jasper was out there somewhere plotting. He wants a war, Clara said, handing the tablet back. Fine, let's give him one. The Four Seasons suite was luxurious, but it felt like a bunker. Jasper paced the floor, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Sienna was on the couch monitoring the stock price. It's working, Sienna said. The stock is down 14% in after-hours trading. The mental instability rumor is scaring the institutional investors. They don't want a volatile CEO. Good, Jasper said. He took a sip of whiskey. But it's not enough. Clara is stubborn. She'll hold on until the IPO roadshow, and if she nails that, the stock recovers. We need to kill the company now. We need to make it toxic before she can fix it. There was a knock at the door. Jasper opened it. Victor Krell stood there. He was a short, balding man with eyes like a raptor. He didn't look like a tech billionaire. He looked like a loan shark. Jasper, Victor said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You look like hell. I've had a bad day, Victor, Jasper said. Do we have a deal? That depends, Victor said, sitting in the armchair and crossing his legs. You say you can cripple their logistics network, but my engineers tell me your system is fortress grade. Clara's security protocols are legendary. Clara's protocols are good, Jasper admitted. But she has a blind spot. She trusts people. Jasper pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. 5 years ago, Jasper said, twisting the drive in his fingers, we hired a contractor to overhaul the legacy servers. I had him install a back door, just in case I ever needed to bypass the security for creative accounting. Clara doesn't know it exists. She never audited that specific cluster because it handles the boring stuff, HVAC, lighting, physical building security. And, Victor asked. And, Jasper smiled cruelly. It's bridged to the main operational server. If I plug this into any terminal with admin access, I can inject a script that randomizes the shipping data. Packages intended for New York will go to Nebraska. Medical supplies will go to toy stores. It will be total chaos. The company's reputation will be destroyed in 24 hours. The stock will hit zero, and you can buy the assets for scrap. Victor looked at the USB drive. And how do you plan to plug that in? You've been banned from the building. I don't have to, Jasper said. He looked at Sienna. But Sienna still has friends on the inside. Don't you, darling? Sienna looked up, startled. I have an assistant. Emily. She's loyal. She thinks I'm the victim in all this. Call her, Jasper ordered. Tell her you left a personal hard drive in your desk with family photos on it. Tell her you need it, but you're worried Clara will confiscate it. Ask her to plug it in and upload the files to your personal cloud. That's a felony, Jasper, Sienna whispered. We're past felonies, Sienna, Jasper shouted. We're fighting for our lives. Do it. 2 hours later at Sterling Dynamics HQ, Clara was in the server room with Benji. It was 11:00 p.m., but the team was still working. They were patching the security holes locking down the accounts. We're mostly secure, Benji said, rubbing his eyes. We've revoked all of Jasper's keys. The biometric locks are reset. Unless he has a literal key to the front door, he can't get in. Good, Clara said. She was exhausted. She sat on a folding chair watching the blinking lights of the server racks. You should go home, Benji. You've done enough. I'm staying, Benji said. I like the new boss. Just then a red light on the main console started flashing. What is that? Clara asked. Benji frowned. He rolled his chair over to the monitor. Weird. Unexpected outbound traffic. It's coming from the marketing department, station 404. That's an admin assistant's desk. Clara stood up. Show me. On the screen, lines of code were scrolling rapidly. Initiating random walk, XE target global dispatch table. No, Clara gasped. It's a scrambler. Benji, kill the connection. I can't, Benji yelled, his fingers flying across the keyboard. It's bypassing the firewall. It's using the HVAC controller bridge. Who the hell wired the air conditioning to the dispatch server? Jasper, Clara whispered. It's eating the database, Benji said, panic rising in his voice. Clara, if this runs for 5 more minutes, we lose the shipping manifest for the last 10 years. We lose everything. Every active shipment will be lost in transit. Clara closed her eyes. She thought of the code, the beautiful complex architecture she had built in her garage while Jasper watched TV. She knew every knot, every loop. Isolate the node, Clara commanded. I can't isolate it without shutting down the whole grid. Then shut it down, Clara said. If we shut down the truck stop, we miss the Amazon delivery window. The penalties will bankrupt us. Do it, Clara screamed. Benji hit the master breaker. The hum of the servers died. The room went silent. The lights flickered and went out, leaving them in the red glow of the emergency backups. It stopped, Benji breathed. But we're dead in the water. The system is offline. We have 50,000 trucks on the road right now with no instructions. Clara stood in the darkness. She felt a vibration in her pocket. It was her personal phone, a text from an unknown number. Nice blackout. Ready to sell yet? Jay. Clara stared at the screen. The anger that had been simmering all day cooled into something harder, something sharper. Benji, she said softly. Turn the servers back on. Clara, the virus is still there. If we turn it on, it finishes the job. No, Clara said. We're not booting up the Sterling OS. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small battered external hard drive. It looked ancient. What is that? Benji asked. This, Clara said, is Project Dahlia. It's the system I was building before Jasper forced me to stop coding. It's not based on the old architecture. It's quantum-resistant, decentralized, and it doesn't use the HVAC bridge. She handed the drive to Benji. Wipe the drives, she ordered. Every single one of them. Delete Jasper's legacy code. Delete everything. You want me to format the company? Benji looked at her like she was insane. I want you to upgrade it, Clara said. Install Dahlia. It will take an hour to propagate. During that hour, I'm going to go on live TV and tell the world exactly what Jasper just did. He'll deny it, Benji said. He can't, Clara said, a small smile playing on her lips. Because the Dahlia protocol has a feature I never told anyone about. It traces the source of every intrusion. And it doesn't just find the IP address. It turns on the webcam of the device that sent the command. She pointed to the dark monitor. When we boot this up, Benji, we're going to have a 4K video of whoever plugged in that virus. And I have a feeling we're going to see a very familiar face. Benji grinned. He plugged in the drive. Formatting drives in 3, 2, 1. In the Four Seasons suite, Jasper and Victor were clinking glasses. The system is down. Victor laughed. My sources say the servers are hard crashing. It's over, Jasper. She's finished. Jasper smiled, leaning back. I told you, she's a housewife. She panicked and pulled the plug. Sienna was in the corner looking pale. She had just gotten a text from Emily, her assistant. I did it, but the computer acted weird. The webcam light turned on. Jasper, Sienna said nervously, did you secure the connection? It's encrypted, Sienna. Relax. We won. Suddenly, the TV in the hotel room, which had been tuned to CNBC, cut to a breaking news alert. Breaking Sterling Dynamics. CEO to address cyber attack. Look at this. Jasper laughed, pointing at the screen. Her concession speech. Clara appeared on the screen. She was sitting in the dim light of the server room. She looked tired, but her eyes were blazing. 5 minutes ago, Clara said to the camera, Sterling Dynamics was the victim of a cyber attack intended to destroy our logistics data. This attack was initiated from within our own network. She's bluffing, Jasper sneered. However, Clara continued, the attacker didn't realize that our security system was upgraded tonight. We tracked the intrusion. On the TV screen, a video window popped up. It was grainy at first, then sharpened. It showed a young woman, Emily, trembling as she plugged a USB drive into a computer. But then the video cut to a screen recording of the upload. And in the metadata of the file being uploaded, clearly visible was the account name, J. Sterling Private Cloud, device iPhone 14 Pro, Max, Sienna's iPhone. Jasper dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor. And, Clara said, we have the geolocation of the device that authorized the script. A map appeared. It zoomed in on New York City, then Midtown, then the Four Seasons Hotel. Jasper Sterling and Sienna Brooks, Clara said, her voice turning to steel. The FBI is on their way to your hotel room. I suggest you pack. Again. Jasper stared at the TV. The color drained from his face. There was a pounding at the door. FBI, open up. Victor Krell stood up slowly. He looked at Jasper with disgust. You idiot. You used her phone. Jasper stammered. Victor walked to the door and opened it for the agents. He's right here, gentlemen. The flashing lights of the police cruisers reflected off the wet pavement outside the Four Seasons, creating a kaleidoscope of red and blue. A crowd had gathered, phones held high, live streaming the downfall of a titan. When Jasper Sterling emerged from the revolving doors, he wasn't wearing his Brioni jacket. It was draped over his wrists to hide the handcuffs. He looked smaller than anyone had ever seen him. His hair was disheveled, his face a mask of shock. Behind him, Sienna Brooks was weeping openly, shielding her face with a scarf. As the officers guided Jasper into the back of the squad car, he looked up. Across the street, parked in the shadows, was a black Lincoln Town car. The window rolled down just an inch. Jasper squinted. He saw a pair of blue eyes watching him. Cold, unforgiving. It was Clara. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just watched as the door slammed shut on her husband's career. The car pulled away, disappearing into the rainy New York night, while Clara's driver pulled the Lincoln seamlessly into traffic, heading back to the office. 1 year later. The skyline of Manhattan hadn't changed, but the hierarchy within it had. Sterling Dynamics, now rebranded simply as Dahlia Logistics, was trading at an all-time high of $145 a share. The Dahlia Protocol, the quantum-resistant logistics software Clara had deployed that fateful night, was now the industry standard licensed by Amazon, FedEx, and even the U.S. military. Clara sat in her office, the corner office. It had been remodeled. The dark, intimidating wood was gone, replaced by light oak and open glass. Alistair Pendleton sat across from her, sipping tea. "The SEC investigation is officially closed," Alistair said, placing a file on her desk. Jasper accepted the plea deal. 3 years in federal prison for corporate espionage and wire fraud. Sienna got probation and a lifetime ban from holding a financial officer position in any publicly traded company. She's currently working as a real estate agent in New Jersey. Clara nodded, her expression unreadable. "And the civil suit?" "Settled," Alistair said. "He surrendered his remaining equity to the trust to pay for the legal fees. He is, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt." Alistair paused. He looked at Clara with a strange expression. "There is one thing, however, that still confuses me, Clara." "Oh," Clara asked, not looking up from her screen. "The lawsuit from 5 years ago," Alistair said slowly. "The one that started all of this. The patent troll from Texas that sued Sterling Dynamics, scaring Jasper into moving the assets into the Dahlia Trust." Clara stopped typing. She took off her reading glasses. "I looked into that Texas firm recently," Alistair continued. "It was a shell company, dissolved 2 days after the trust was signed, and the signatory for that shell company was a lawyer in Zurich who specializes in anonymous trusts." Alistair leaned forward. "Clara, did you sue your own husband?" Clara stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city she now conquered. 5 years ago," Clara said softly, "I found a second phone in Jasper's briefcase. There was no Sienna then. It was someone else, a secretary. I realized then that Jasper was incapable of loyalty. I knew that one day he would try to discard me, and I knew that he was reckless with the company we built." She turned back to Alistair, a faint, dangerous smile on her lips. "I couldn't divorce him then. He would have fought me for half the company, and he would have won. I needed him to give me the company voluntarily. So I created a threat, the lawsuit. I made him so afraid of losing his money to a stranger that he handed it all to me for safekeeping." Alistair stared at her, his mouth slightly open. "You played the long game. You set a trap 5 years in advance." "I didn't set a trap, Alistair," Clara said, picking up her tablet. "I built a firewall. Jasper just finally tried to hack it." She checked her watch. "I have a board meeting. Victor Krell is coming in to discuss a merger, on my terms this time." Clara walked out of the office, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. She wasn't the frumpy wife in the corner anymore. She wasn't even just the CEO, she was the architect, and the city was finally running on her code. And that is how Clara Sterling didn't just get even, she got everything. She proved that in the game of business, the loudest person in the room isn't always the smartest. Jasper thought he was the king because he held the gavel, but he forgot that a king is nothing without the castle, and Clara owned the deed to the whole kingdom. The most satisfying part, Jasper dug his own grave 5 years ago, signing papers he didn't read to hide money he didn't really own from a wife he underestimated. What do you think? Was Clara's final twist genius or terrifying? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes corporate revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next story. We've got a tale coming up next week about a lottery winner who kept his jackpot secret from his greedy family for 10 years, until the Thanksgiving dinner from hell. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.